as the vice mayor or the mayor.
Okay. Now I'm going to take you back before the April 22nd, 2020 date, okay?
Sure.
Was there an issue in scheduling that meeting or actually having that meeting?
We're talking about the April 22nd meeting?
Right.
Well, prior to that, the
March 18th?
Yeah, March 18th meeting, we had discussion on the city council. It was very clear when we were discussing the emergency order assigned about that order. And we made it very clear to the city manager that if he wasn't able to hold a safe meeting where the public could be engaged, or if there was no issues that weren't of an emergency in nature, then he were to cancel any meetings that were coming up. We were in pretty extraordinary times back then. You know, the pandemic had just hit. We didn't really know what we were doing. We were kind of taking our lead from the county and the state. And, you know, we didn't know what we had. So our goal at the time was to make sure that the public was safe, and that was the number one goal.
All right. So that was basically the thinking of the whole city council back in March of 18?
Well, we had to
what everyone else thought.
Well, is that what all the council members said during March of 18?
Sure. The discussion was clear that most of the council members that were there were uncomfortable even having the meeting at the time because the public really important that the public be involved in all the decisions that are made in government. You know, sunshine laws in the state of Florida are there to protect the citizens of.
Sustain.
Okay. So, nevertheless, this was discussed at the March 18th meeting.
It was discussed, yes.
Okay. Did you start receiving emails concerning the upcoming April 22nd meeting?
Oh, absolutely. When the agenda came out, there was nothing of an emergency in nature on the agenda, and we were still kind of trying to
Go back to
figure
that. There was nothing of an emergency nature on the agenda?
Right. The agenda had providing Sebastian council members with health care, removing the city manager, discussion on on their positions, the city manager, city attorney. Just nothing that was like a real emergency. You know, any of these things could have been handled at any time in the near future, and certainly all of those issues that were on there, the public would want to be involved.
Objection is to what the public wants.
Okay. Well, going on to, let me go back to the email question.
Okay.
You will start receiving emails concerning the upcoming April 22nd meeting.
Yes, absolutely. We've hundreds of emails. Certainly in the 20 plus years that I've been impacted in politics in the city of Sebastian, was more than I had ever received in any given time on any issue.
Okay, that's a big statement. For you've been in city politics and as a councilman for 20 years, and you've never seen anything like that.
Not even close. We had several issues that were controversial in nature, and none of them have ever gone to the level of regarding the emails that I've received.
Okay.
All in opposition.
And now you say all the emails that you saw were in opposition to what?
All in opposition to us holding the meeting because the public couldn't, at that time, engage in the discussion.
Okay. So, because of these emails, and because of your own personal views, did you express a view to the city manager, Mr. Carlisle?
I did. On Friday, following my receiving the agenda, I wrote an email to him expressing my desire for him to cancel the meeting. The email stated that I didn't see anything that was an emergency on the agenda. And I also let him know that it's important that the public be allowed to engage in these discussions. They would want to engage in these discussions, and that they wouldn't have the ability currently as it's established in the city of Sebastian. We were still early on in the process of getting our COVID sort of protocol. Oh no, the city manager was working diligently to try to go ahead and figure out a way that the public could safely engage.
Okay. In that week prior to the April 20th, different efforts made to try to comply with the sunshine law and having that meeting.
Well, certainly the city manager and their staff are working like to separate the chairs within the chambers, to provide outdoor viewing and then the possibility to engage through coming in and so early on in the process, and it was so new to us that we weren't ready to have a safe meeting happen.
Okay. So by the date of April 22nd, were y'all even close to being able to accommodate the public? Did you have that meeting?
I beg your pardon, I don't understand the question.
By April 22nd, were you even close to being able to accommodate the number of the public that said they wanted to come?
No, not close.
Okay. Did you receive a group email from Paul Carlisle on April 22nd?
I received an email from him. I'm not sure if it was to the city council or whether it was to each of us individually. But yes, it was a group email to all of us on the 22nd.
Okay. So you received that email back cancel the meeting?
Yes, sir.
So did you, because of that email, did you bother going to the city hall that evening?
I did not.
Okay. Did you receive any notice that any kind of meeting would proceed?
No, sir.
No notice at all?
No.
Okay. No emails?
No email.
No phone calls?
No, sir.
Nobody left anything at your door?
No, sir.
Okay, so you didn't go?
I did not go.
Okay. Now, did you discover afterwards that some kind of meeting was held on that time?
I did.
Do the city council members receive training on the sunshine law?
Yes, sir.
Okay. You stated there you saw Jim Stokes, the prior city attorney. Did he have a practice of giving orientation to new council members?
He does.
Okay. And also there are other educational opportunities for council people to go to in order to get their education on the sunshine law?
Yeah, there are. There's also, when you pick up your packet, at the very beginning, if you want to become a candidate, you pick up a packet and there's a pamphlet in there that covers the corruption and sunshine law.
Okay.
And then, yes, there's continual education, and the memos that are put on by the Florida League of Cities are great ones.
And during these council meetings, is there continuing education on the sunshine?
Well, there is. Periodically, we'll have a question that will come up, and the city attorney will explain whether we should be having discussions on any given item based upon whether it's on the agenda, not on the agenda. Those happen quite often.
No other questions, John?
Now, you mentioned a few things on March 18th, but I just want to go into a few more things. The March 18th, 2020 hearing,
Sure.
our meeting. Now, the day before that, there'd been a declaration of emergency. All right. And you're aware that the city charter does allow a declaration of emergency, am I correct?
Yes.
Okay. But in addition to that declaration of emergency, any city council member can request a review of that declaration of emergency at any time.
Correct.
Okay. And on March 18th of 2020, there was a vote whether to continue with the meeting or to not continue with the meeting. Do you remember that?
I believe it was relative to a hearing that was going to take place during that meeting.
Okay. And the vote was three councilmen in favor of continuing, 2 councilmen in favor of stopping the meeting.
I'm sure, I don't recall the exact vote, but that may be it, sure.
Okay, and then after that vote, Mayor Dodd gavelled that March 18th meeting to an end.
Yes.
Okay. So there would have been a next regularly scheduled city council meeting on April 8th of 2020?
Whatever the second Tuesday of April, yes.
Okay, but that one was postponed by agreement. Everyone agreed that the April 8th regularly scheduled meeting would be postponed, correct?
Yes.
And everything was rolled over until April 22 of 2020. Yes, yes?
I don't believe that everything that was on that agenda was on it. I'm not certain. I apologize. I see so many agendas, but there was a meeting that was scheduled for April 22nd, and the agenda items on it.
Right. So you referred to an agenda, in evidence of State's Exhibit 1 is an excerpt of the agenda for the April 22nd meeting. Just, we want to make sure that you recognize that.
Sure, looks like it probably is, yes.
Okay, so I just want to go over a few things that were on there. On that agenda was review of the emergency declaration, is that correct?
Yes,
Okay, so you know, based upon the city charter, that any council member can schedule a review of the declaration of emergency at any time, right?
yes,
Okay. And notice you agree, because you got a copy of that agenda at least the week before this particular April 22nd, 2020 hearing.
so this meeting was canceled.
Okay, all right, now, but my question to you, sir, was you got a copy of the agenda the week before for the April 22nd, 2020
Yes, sir.
meeting?
That's
right?
correct.
You got that?
Yes,
And it would be the normal practice for the city employees to distribute that notification to everybody who wanted to see it.
of course.
Okay, and if you look carefully at it, it says page 1 of quite a large number, like 389. Do you see that?
Sorry. Quite blind, I'm sorry about that. 359.
Okay, so would it be fair for us to assume that what you received was the entire agenda, all 359 pages?
Yes, I received it digitally. I wouldn't have gotten a full packet, I would have received it digitally.
Okay, and you've already there on April 22, 2020?
That's correct.
And you had received some sort of communication from the city manager that he was postponing the April 22nd meeting?
Yes,
Okay. And what you got from the city manager indicated he was postponing the regularly scheduled April 22nd meeting, right?
he was postponing the meeting that was advertised to the public as a meeting we were going to hold on the 22nd.
And did that communication indicate that the city manager was canceling any special or emergency meetings for April 22nd that were requested by another council member?
No, he did not.
Thank you. No further.
You and her often do not see eye to eye on political issues.
Sure,
Is that fair to say?
absolutely.
There was a meeting in December in which you were outvoted, in which pesticides were banned, correct?
Sure.
You called that a hoax,
Not sure I'm gathering what you're saying.
that the movement against pesticides was a hoax. Isn't that what you were
Well,
quoted
I
saying?
may have used the word hoax through my statement, but I don't believe I necessarily called the movement a hoax. But, yeah, we disagreed on several issues, sure.
Environmental being one of them.
Sure.
But that's what happens in politics, there's sides and people
Yeah,
try to
sure.
do things.
I have 2 degrees in environmental horticulture with a focus on pesticides and fertilizers, so I do know a little bit about it.
Well, then I promise you, I'm not gonna tangle with you on that.
Quite all right.
Okay, you know more than me. But the point is, politically, different sides of the issue.
Certainly.
Okay. Now, the March 18th meeting, as I understand it, your impression was everyone at the time wanted to cancel the meeting for April 22nd.
Not only, if you beg my pardon, not only
Take your
the
time.
impression, but the discussion took place where the city manager was explicitly directed that if there was not an item that was of an emergency that needed to be taken care of during the pandemic, and that the public could engage and be at the meeting safely, then he was to cancel those meetings.
And, you know, we know from this picture here, you know, what a wonderful time period, no one's wearing masks.
Yeah, it was great.
Hopefully, God willing, we get back to that soon. But so this isn't really representative of what was going on March 18th. We were just starting to hear what was about to fall, right?
Correct.
And by April 22nd, it was sort of in full flight, right?
That's correct.
Now, apparently nobody wants to have a meeting, but an agenda goes out for a meeting. That seems kind of conflicting, doesn't it? You can answer yes or no, and then explain.
I don't believe it's conflicting in that there may have been some who wanted to have the meeting and some who didn't think it was safe.
Okay.
I can understand why they didn't do it.
Of course, some people could have changed their minds.
Sure.
I mean, Winston Churchill said people who don't change their minds never change anything. So they're allowed, people are allowed to change their minds.
100%.
So regardless of what went on the 18th, there's enough going on with an agenda going out that Paul Carlisle at some point feels compelled to cancel the meeting.
Correct.
Because before that, the meeting was noticed on the website.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what generated the response from the citizens.
Mm-hmm.
The fact, you have to answer yes or no.
I'm sorry, yes.
The fact that there's this meeting and you're getting a lot of emails from people who don't want it.
Correct.
So there's no question that everybody knows this meeting is pending, let's put it that way.
Sure.
Okay. Now, did you have discussions with Mr. Carlisle about Mr. Carlisle felt about how to cancel the meeting? That he was looking for direction?
I did not have discussions with him about this. I sent
You
him my-
saw, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No problem.
Did you see the email from him on the 22nd where he talks about having a consensus?
I saw the email that he sent.
Okay, and he says he has a consensus of the city council, correct?
Sure. Again, I don't recall the exact wording on it, but he felt that he had a consensus from the council.
All right. But what we know is Mr. Mowdy showed up, Mr. Gilliams showed up, correct? And Pam Parris showed up, correct?
Your response
Yeah,
to any of those questions, Mr. Reisenstein.
That's
Mr. Mowdy showed up, right?
He sure did.
Pam Parris showed up,
Yes, he did.
and Mr. Gilliams showed up.
They all three did.
Now, there was a lot of questions about if you'd seen the city council and, the lights weren't on, for example.
Mhm.
And at some point, he said, the prosecutor asked you, did you think something was amiss? Correct?
Correct.
What do you think is amiss? Tell us more about what you think is amiss. I'm curious.
Well, the city council meetings are all done exactly the same, except for what's on the agenda. When it goes out, the lights are on, the dais is set up, my water's sitting there waiting for me at my chair, my mail is sitting there. Everything that takes place at every meeting is very normal. Anything else would be amiss. It would be some sort of indication to me that there wasn't a meeting or something had changed.
Now, if you happen to be out, let's just say getting barbecue that night, and you saw the city council, and you saw 3 city council members, and you saw the public, would you be able to say to yourself, gee, looks like there's a meeting going on?
No.
Okay. So in your mind, if you see 3 city council, by the way, let's add a little bit more to this. On the date of the meeting and at the time of the meeting, April 22nd, 6 p.m., 3 city council members, public, you're looking at that and you're saying, they've got to be talking about what the Jacksonville Jaguars are going to do with their first pick. They can't be having a city council meeting. Is that correct?
Me, yes, that's exactly what I would think.
Okay. Now, how long does it take you to set up the chair, sir?
I don't set the chairs.
How long does it take you? Do you have the key that turns on the lights?
No, I do not.
How about the key that undogs the doors?
No, sir.
So those are things that other people do,
Correct.
correct? Now, we've got a city council meeting on April 22nd at 6 p.m., but the person who turns on the lights, that person doesn't show up, right?
Correct.
And the person who sets up the chairs, that person doesn't show up, correct?
Correct.
You've been on the council a long time. If I show you the city charter, you're going to say, I'm familiar with this, correct?
I am.
Okay. Would you be able to point to me and our jury in the city charter that says the person who turns the lights has to be there before the meeting begins? How about the person who sets up the chairs has to be there before the meeting begins?
Not in there.
Okay. What it does say is it takes 3 council members to have a majority vote, correct?
That's it.
Okay. And what we know from the sunshine law is the meeting has to be noticed
Yes.
and the meeting has to be available to the public, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, now, I'm not going to do this, so I'm going to turn my phone around the other way. But if you and I were talking and I was doing this to you, would you sort of think that I was recording you?
I would think that.
Okay. Now, if I'm recording you and that video ends up out in the public, do you think I'm trying to hide it?
No.
Did you see the video because you're a council member where people are holding up phones and recording what's going on that day?
I did.
Maybe not obviously that day, but some later point in time, right?
Yes.
You saw that because I imagine there's been some chatter about this.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. How well do you know Paul Carlisle?
I know him pretty well. We're friendly.
He was at your house?
He was.
Okay, and let's be clear, I'm not alleging any sort of violation. I'm taking it was a social visit.
Of course.
Okay, and that was in the evening, and then you guys learned there's a meeting going on.
That's right.
That's how it played out, right?
That's exactly right.
Okay, all right. I don't think I have any other questions.
Mr. Hill?
I'm good. Thank you for your time.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you.
Mr. Taylor, redirect.
Yes, Your Honor. Mr. Hill, going back to this photograph, are you sitting up on the dais?
Yes, sir.
And so are the co-defendants?
They are.
Okay. Now, you stated that when you come in for a regular meeting, there's water waiting for you.
There is.
You said there's also something else waiting for you on your desk.
It would be any of the mail that I would have since the last time I visited City Hall. Always a piece of paper. Those things are always there.
So a notepad, some
Just a piece of
pencil.
paper, a pencil, our mail, any agenda items that may be, certainly stuff there. And then my water, of course. I would get 2 waters if I drink water.
Okay. And I forgot to ask you about this thing over here that's lit up. What's that? That's usually lit up when you have a meeting?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, now the meetings are scheduled usually for 6 p.m.?
They are.
All right. Scheduled at 6 p.m. You stated you enter through those side doors, correct?
That's correct.
All right. What time do you get there to the regular meeting?
Objection outside the scope.
How is this not outside the scope of cross? Why are we?
You asked about the meeting, I'm asking about the meeting as well. But Judge, if you want me to sit down, I'll sit down.
I'll sustain the objection.
No more questions?
Can this witness be released?
Yes, Your Honor.